Good. Welcome. All right. Welcome, everyone. It is good to see you. While we just give everyone another minute or two to show up, you're welcome to pop in the chat where you're calling in from. And if I'm assuming that since this is a procrastination and perfectionism workshop, that you either struggle with one or both of these issues. So whichever one it is, or if it's both, maybe just pop that in the chat, because it'll also help me figure out like where I should spend a little bit more time. So again, what we'll be doing in our little call together today is having... I was just thinking, no, my power hasn't gone. Luckily. Okay. What we're going to be looking at is like having an Ayurvedic perspective with regards to procrastination and perfectionism, looking at it also with regards to like how it relates to the chakras and why it's an issue for so many of us. Okay, so let's just see what's popping up in the chat. Okay, so Anya's shining in, coming in from Takai, and Carolyn, perfectionism is getting in the way of getting things done, leading to procrastination. Exactly. Morning, Ranal. We're just popping in the notes in the chat what we're leading to. So pretty much what you're probably relating to is this little comment here. Perfectionism is often an excuse for procrastination. And I think that's what a lot of us can relate to as well, is this aspect. So welcome, Nicolette, as well. We were just literally having a little chat about, you know, which side we fall on, if it's perfectionism, if it's procrastination, if it's both. And Carolyn was just saying that, yeah, you know, she finds that her perfectionism is leading to procrastination. And that's exactly what Paul Graham, I think he is an IT guy, also venture capitalist, and that's what he was saying. So for those of you who don't know me yet, very quickly, I am an Ayurvedic lifestyle coach, and I've got 20 years now, how about that, as a yoga educator and small business owner, which is quite cool. This year will be 20 years since we've had our yoga studio. And so last year I was doing a lot of free talks, and then I got a little busy with setting up my business, and now I'm getting back into offering little free talks that are going to be really helpful and impactful, at least I'm hoping, for everyone. So we're going to get straight into it with a couple of like challenges that often arise with regards to perfectionism. And what happens is when perfectionism kicks in, we often have this idea of like unrealistic expectations, often really high. We set high expectations of ourselves and often others as well. And that leads to a sense of dissatisfaction. And what actually happens is that we never actually really meet any of our expectations. So that is the one thing. The other often challenge that arises with perfectionism is this idea of fear of failure. And because we're so scared of failing, we actually don't take action. We don't implement action, and we don't take risks. And when we don't take risks, we're not in the space of taking on or exploring new opportunities that arise. And for those of us who love to travel, if we only ever travel to like the same places that we are familiar with. I don't know if you had that when you were growing up as kids. Like we always went to the same caravan park out in Sedgefield, you know, then like after a couple of years, it was like the same place and place. And at some point, if you're always only doing the same thing, you're never actually going to grow. So it is this idea of fear of failure. That is a big one as well. What also happens when perfectionism kicks in is that there is often an increased level of stress and anxiety because we're so worried about not meeting our own standards or other people's standards that our stress and anxiety levels actually shoot up instead of actually just being comfortable with taking action. All right. And then there are two more that I wanted to just touch on is this impaired well-being. So what often happens is that if we are on the perfectionism spectrum, we want to do things perfectly and we don't stop until that happens. And that often will lead to things like burnout. It can also lead to depression if we, for example, have to hand in a piece of work that we're not completely comfortable with, that is not up to our standard. That can lead to depression, which can then also lead to us having the sense of low self-esteem, and it affects us mentally and emotionally. And I think this is one of the big ones that I personally relate to, is like whenever I wanted to do something, I always wanted it to be perfect. And I would spend more time than was necessary on actually making it happen, instead of actually just handing in or doing what was available and potentially doable on my side. And then what that kind of led to was this fifth thing for me, which is reduced productivity, where I actually, because there's so much then to do, because you want it at such a high level, you actually don't have enough time to spend on other things, which then reduces or affects our productivity. All right, so in a nutshell, perfectionism, that's kind of like the challenges that I find come up. You're welcome to share if you have any others. What I wanted to touch on now with procrastination, before we get into kind of like looking at the Ayurvedic solutions to these, is one, that if we procrastinate, there is a sense of increased stress in our lives, because we're always pushing ourselves to this last minute rush, doing things at the very end. And for those of you who aren't procrastinators and you do work well in advance, it is very frustrating to work with people who are procrastinators, because they will literally, hand in a project or an assignment or a report, a couple of hours beforehand. And it does increase our levels of stress. Again, procrastinating also reduces our productivity, because not just are we wasting time, but what happens is that if we keep procrastinating stuff, we're missing opportunities in the rest of our day or in the rest of our life, because we're so focused on this thing that we still have to do. And if we would have just done it, we could have opened up time and space, kind of like how yoga and Ayurveda looks at it, for new opportunities to come in. But if we constantly just bogged down by this thing that we need to do and we don't actually do it, we don't create that time and space for ourselves. It can also lead to missed deadlines, because you just put it off, and then you just don't get it done. And that will then actually impact our reputation, because you don't really want to be known as the person who keeps missing deadlines, or being the student or the person at work who always needs to ask for an extension for something to be done. And in today's day and age, we've moved from kind of like the information technology space to the reputation phase, especially kind of like with AI and everything out there. Like, our reputation is literally the biggest, or our biggest asset that we have. And if we start to destroy that with regards to like missed deadlines, you are really going to struggle in that sense. Second last one that I wanted to just touch on is this sense of negative self-image, because if we associate ourselves as a procrastinator, we always thinking less of ourselves. We have less confidence. We feel that there's a sense of inadequacy with ourselves. We realize that we're actually unreliable. We're a little ineffective. And when we start keep building and building and building on that, and that negative self-talk, it can actually take us down into a downward spiral. I know a lot of you know that I've spoken a lot about our evolutionary spiral, and we want to be evolving and growing. And if we have this negative self-talk or self-image of ourselves, and we don't switch that around into something positive, like I'm an action taker, then every time procrastination kicks in, we are always kind of taking ourselves down that evolutionary spiral. And ultimately what happens is that there's then a diminished quality of work. So our standards are probably just going to not be as satisfactory as what we want. All right, so those are kind of like the challenges that we face when it comes to perfectionism and procrastination. And what I wanted to share with you is this little image, and a lot of you have heard me talk about this before, is this idea of self-sabotage that we talk about. In Ayurveda, we call it the 3 malas. Well, the one that we're not going to look at today is Unraveling Mala, which is at the heart center, this feeling of loneliness, disconnection. We'll look at that at some other stage in one of the other free talks. But what I wanted to look at today is Maya Mala, which is at the third eye, and that addresses perfectionism. And Karma Mala, which is at the solar plexus, which is this inability to actually take action. All right, so what does this all mean? Let's see if I can just make it me. Okay, it doesn't want to be just me. Let me see if I can put us there. Okay, so with Maya Mala, which is this third eye, which is kind of like where perfectionism sits. And this little slide I've taken from, Carolyn, you'll recognize it from my Pathways to Natural Living. There's a little program that I've got that literally takes you through 2 hours, and it helps you analyze, like, you know, how it is you self-sabotage yourself. And if perfectionism is there, it's a space kind of like where we are actually unable to see the good in ourselves and others, and we're critical of ourselves and others. Again, perfectionism is a trait that comes in here. And we also have this tendency of either being a know-it-all, or we can flip to the other side where we have an inferiority complex. So if you're kind of ticking these boxes in sometimes or always, then you'll know that one of your classic self-sabotage behaviors is Maya Mala, which is the third eye. And we'll get in a moment as to like how you actually take action with that. What I wanted to share with you next, there we go. I can't, let me see if I can move us down here for now. All right, and Karma Mala, the solar plexus one, is this idea of inaction. And if you struggle with procrastination, you may find that you struggle to get organized. So that might be something that happens sometimes, always, rarely, never. You struggle to actually take action when you know that you need to make that appointment with SARS. And I'm just using that because Ronelle's here, and I know we've just had a chat about this in one of our calls with regards to that. So if you know that you struggle to take action with the hard things that need to get done, that is there. When you struggle to ask for help, so you want to do everything yourself, and you think you're the only one who can do it, and you don't actually ask others for help, you make excuses. So there's always a reason why something can't happen, and it's like either the weather, or it's the government, or it is, you know, that there's not enough money, or whatever the story is. There's always excuses. You don't have time, and you don't actually participate, or you hold yourself back from being involved in what needs to happen to move you forward. All right, so that was the previous one. Whoopsie, before was, where we go, Maya Mala, which is a third eye, which is measuring, and then this one is the solar plexus, the inaction, and how do you feel about that? All right, so when it comes to Maya Mala, this idea of perfectionism and third eye center, easy ways to look at that and slowly start to work with that is, the easiest one is literally just to take action, no matter how small. And that's one of the behavioral practices that we work with in the course together, is this idea of Kaizen. And it's small incremental steps and changes. So if you know that there is a big project you need to do, if you know that there is say you're wanting to get like a morning routine together for yourself, and you find that, like, this is the way you want to do it. And you maybe have a lie-in for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So you find that like your full 1 hour routine that you wanted to do isn't going to happen. And so you throw the baby out with the bathwater instead of actually just taking a small little action. And it might just be, sitting on your yoga mat for 2 minutes to breathe. So it's just this idea of taking action, no matter how small, but moving in the right direction. So it's like you guys are all doing, joining in on this call. You're actually already taking action in the right direction to maybe acknowledge and resonate with some of the aspects that I have been alluding to or sharing or speaking about. All right. The second thing that I found is really helpful when it comes to perfectionism is being less judgmental on oneself and being less judgmental on others. And this is where it can be really, really helpful to be spending time with the right people and being in the right community. So if you find that you're quite isolated, or they're not enough of the people that you really want to be spending time with who are uplifting and positive and are going to actually hold you accountable and spur you on with what it is you need to do, you need to really seek out those kind of people, because they're going to help you be less judgmental on yourself. Plus, you're going to be able to see that, inspired by others. If this person's able to do it, like if Ronel's able to get to SAR's office and make the appointment and get it done, then I'm going to be able to do it as well. And one motivates one another. The third one that has been so helpful in our group with our program is looking at the gain. So there's a brilliant book, and if you haven't read it yet, by Benjamin Hardy, it's called The Gap and the Gain. It's not a very long book. And ultimately what he's saying in there is that so often when we're looking at ourselves, and this is where perfectionism comes in, we look at like where we're starting and we know what the goal is that we want to achieve. And usually we don't achieve the goal. We kind of like fall a little short of it. And gap mentality is where we compare ourselves with where we got to and the goal that we wanted to achieve. So we always have this inferior complex, like, didn't get there, missed this, wasn't right. Whereas the gain perspective looks at like where you started and where you actually arrived and the gains that you've made in the process of doing that. And for those of us who have a lot of these perfectionistic tendencies, it's really, really helpful to look at the gains, because before, when I was talking about the, I wanted to go back again to here, this idea of this fear of failure, that can really be helpful with regards to looking at the gain, because you're not actually failing, you're actually noticing the positives that you've got. All right. With the gap and the gain, how it pretty much works, I'll give you a quick, we've got time. Yeah, it's easy peasy. So how it works is pretty much at the end of the day, you would grab your diary. I always have it near me. And you write down 3 things that you are really proud of that you achieved that day. And what that does is, and you do this just before going to bed or just going to sleep. And what that does is it puts, when you go into that liminal space, it puts you in that positive mindset of, you know what, I have been productive, I have been effective today. And it doesn't matter how big or how small the 3 things are. It could just be that, I've been hydrating today, with my hot water. It could be that you actually completed a big task or a project or your ebook. So it doesn't really matter what it is, because we all have busy days, and we have days where, we can't maybe be as work productive as we would want, but we can actually be productive health-wise, or relational wise, where we're supporting others. So we put down just 3 of the most important. And then we put down the 3 things that we want to achieve the next day. And by doing that, the first thing that you do when you wake up, if you look at your diary, you know exactly what it is you need to do. And then you start taking action on that. And it moves us back into this first step of Kaizen, where it's just small incremental stages and steps. So if you know that you need to create a little project or a little pamphlet or a little flyer, maybe one of the steps is, just to get into Canva and to create a layout or to choose a layout for the day. So you don't actually have to create the whole thing, but you're just doing a part of the action, of the steps. All right. The gap in the gain moves very closely into my next point, which is this gratitude, this idea of having a morning practice. And the morning, in other words, a gratitude morning practice. So just literally waking up in the morning and thinking of those things that you are grateful for. And so you can literally be lying in bed and just running through a whole list of things, or again, it just being 3 things. It can be a big or a smaller practice as you want, but getting into this mindset of gratitude is going to help you transition out of being overcritical or overly judgmental of yourself and others. And it puts you in a more of a peaceful state of mind. And then the last thing that I actually snuck in here just before our call, because it actually came to me when I was having a little meditation, is this idea of there being a deeper meaning or a bigger why. So often we know kind of like what we need to do or why we need to do it. And I find that when your why is bigger than your ego, that it's actually super easy to do what you need to do. And then you're not worried of it having to be done perfectly, but it just needs to get out there. So I'll use this as an example. Like for me, I could have probably spent another hour on finding prettier pictures for the slideshow presentation and making the slides look a little prettier. And probably it would have been really helpful to practice going through all of this, a few more times. But then I would have postponed this workshop, and it probably would have fallen off the band. It probably wouldn't have happened because I would have postponed it so many times, and there would have always been something else to come in. And so when your why is to the information, the content is really important, and that's more important getting that out there than my ego or trying to come across as a certain way. When your why is bigger than your ego, I think that really helps you to kick this idea of perfectionism out of the door. And so that you actually are taking action, so that your skills and what it is you are uniquely talented for, you can actually bring that out into the world. All right, so that is perfectionism. Let's go to procrastination. There we go. Let's move this little dude up. You can come down here again. Wide. Oopsie. Oopsie. All right, procrastination, Ayurvedic perspective. Here we go. So procrastination to me is all about your solar plexus, your Manipura chakra, and this idea of just sitting back and not doing anything. So procrastination, the number one thing to overcome procrastination is literally just to take action. And we were chatting before about with perfectionism with regards to Kaizen, just small little action step, and that still is relevant here. But for me, what I've realized is that with procrastination, you actually have to have a plan or a goal in place. So it is your fire element. It's this idea of Tejas. It is the idea of having like a purpose, a goal that you are wanting to move to. And when that purpose and that goal is aligned with where you want to be going in life, it is so much easier to take action. It is so hard to take action when what you need to take action on doesn't actually align with where you're going and what you're wanting to become. So it's so much easier to jump up in the morning, get ready for work, or get to your laptop when you've got a nice project that is meaningful that you want to be working on. When there is no meaning, it is a lot harder to do that. So the idea is not telling you all to like quit your jobs and go do like, you know, what brings you joy, but to slowly start moving in that direction of like, what does fulfill you? What does make you happier? All right. So idea again, taking action, but have a plan and a goal in place so that you can have that one pointed focus towards doing that. And then the hard things become easier. So if you know that you have a purpose or a goal, if you have to go and deal with SARS, or you have to go to the bank, or you have to go down to, I don't know, ESCOM, or what, all these crappy things that you have to do, you'll actually just do it because you know it's a tool that is going to help you get to your end goal. Like, you know, you'll have to get your bank account sorted if you want to go traveling. And if you want to travel, that is quite a cool plan or goal to have. So you need to have all the steps in place. So you need to, if you know that that's why you're needing to have to go to the bank or to do this, it is a lot easier. All right. The second one that I find is super important for the solar plexus is that this is our fire center. This is our center of digestion. So it's where we not just digest our food, it's also where we process the food, where it then gets absorbed into our system and we eliminate what is not needed. And often what happens with those of us who procrastinate is actually we have very sluggish digestion and we feel quite lethargic and heavy, and we'll find that maybe our gut microbiome isn't really good, that we struggle to digest our food. We haven't maybe changed our food seasonally. So for me, a big action is aspect with procrastination is actually looking within the body as well. And are you getting the right kind of nutrition for what it is you're needing? And again, we're all different and we're all unique and we all need different things. So like we often explore in the clean eating challenge is like our intermittent fasting hours are going to be so different. Like Carolyn's hours are going to be different from Ronal's hours, which is going to be different from me because Carolyn's in summer at the moment and we're down here in the winter. So again, there's no like hard and fast rule, but we need to shift things. We can't always be eating the same thing, you know, the whole year through. And we need to know when our digestion is sluggish and we need to fire it up. We need to know when it is too hot and it's burning too hot and we need to slowly cool it down. And all of these things will affect our ability to take action. The third one that, and I'm sure Ranil is going to be able to give us some insight a little bit later, is this accountability, having someone that you're accountable to. If you find that you're a kind of person who keeps putting things off, having an accountability buddy is super, super helpful because you're just checking in with them and they holding you accountable to do what it is that you're wanting to do for that week. And it's not, you need to have someone who's quite strong and will call you out on your bullshit and is not going to just be like, oh, don't worry, you've had a hard week, da 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 da. Like, yes, you've had a hard week, and what little step did you take towards, you know, the things that you wanted to do? So yes, we need to have empathy and consideration for what's happening, but we actually often find that we need to have someone who can call us out on our nonsense. And because otherwise we get into our regular loop of always making excuses and we're not changing and we're not evolving, because we'll usually find that as soon as something hard happens or we've got to make a hard decision, we then go into our usual operating mode and then the usual results will happen. Whereas when something hard and challenging arises, we actually have got to meet it head on. And when you've got an accountability buddy, that person is going to keep you on track. They're not going to give you an excuse to whittle out of what you need to do. And then the last thing that I wanted to say with procrastination that I think is really helpful is to also work with looking at that gain journal and looking at the positives. Because the more you see and you write down the positive actions that you take, the more you're actually going to be driven and wanting to do those. All right. So procrastination is the thief of time. We did start a minute late. So I'm going to grab one more minute. And also just to say, like, if anyone has questions or insights, I'll happily stay on a little bit longer afterwards and answer any of those. But for those who are interested and would like to figure out pretty much how you're able to address perfectionism, procrastination a bit more simply with an awesome group of people, I do have a membership program, which you are welcome to message me about and to see what that is all about. And it pretty much is for women who are ready to embark on change. So if you're the kind of person who realizes that what you've been doing in the past hasn't been working, and you actually just need to be in a group where you're going to start looking after your health and your lifestyle really well, then this is probably not a bad place to start. All right, so just after past, thank you, ladies, for being here. It has been so great being able to share with you what I am doing and what I am working on. And if anyone has any questions or any insights, you are welcome to literally just unmute and share. And if you need to go, you need to go. You're welcome to do that as well. Right, I see Nicolette busy unmuting, heading towards unmute. I'll give you a moment.
Hi there. It's classic to be late for a procrastination workshop. But I've found I made stars next to some of the notes I made, and the big things for me regarding perfectionism is definitely fear of failure, and that's come up before. And then also with the procrastination is the negative self-image. And then the last thing I feel I need to work on is finding the deeper meaning, because it's becoming more and more difficult for me to motivate to get myself out of bed in the morning. So that snooze button, 5 or 10 minutes has become a half an hour at times. But yeah, so yeah, thanks for that. That's what I've learned.
Good. Thanks for sharing, Nicolette. Always good to see you. And it's always good to find out, or kind of like have an idea as to kind of like, you know, where we are, where we're at, what we're struggling with, what our next steps need to be. When we have clarity on that, then at least we have direction. And again, we can then seek out the right people and support structures who can get us there. So good one there, Nicolette. Nice. All right. Anyone else have some insights, thoughts, feelings?
Okay, so I'll go quickly. I've been with Nina for just almost 2 years now, and the biggest thing that I've learned to help me with my procrastination is the journaling at night. And it literally takes 5 minutes just to write, to acknowledge your 3 wins for the day and put your 3 goals for the day. And there's some magic that happens when you write a thing down instead of it just staying in your head. And I really feel that when you wake up in the morning and you look at your goals for the day, and during the day, the time comes where you actually remembering that goal, you know, you don't really feel like doing it. You know that if you don't do it that evening, it's going to be a negative for you. So you get started, you do that first step. Now, I like that analogy that you said about if you want to travel, you know, do the schlep, do your passport. That's what I did this week. I just have the bigger goal at mind, these little steps, but it really works. So I'm sure there must be some psychology behind what happens when you write something down instead of it just remaining in your head, but it really, really works. And thank you, Nina, for reminding us about that again.
Oh, you're so welcome, Ronald. Thank you always so much for being here and supporting these talks. It's always so lovely to see your face. And it is so true. Like Renal was saying, you know, when you know the bigger goal is to, you know, to end up going on a nice holiday, then going off to do your passport or your visa or going to the bank, whatever it needs to be done, it is still a schlep, but it's not as big as schlep because you know your why. And Benjamin Hardy, he has a lot of, if you head onto YouTube, he has so many videos and free material there as well that you can literally, if you've got nothing else to do today, like you can head out there and get a lot of inspiration. And he does go into the benefits of actually writing it down. So not just thinking about what it is that you've achieved the day and what you're wanting to do the next day, the goals that you're setting for the next day, but actually the importance of pen to paper and putting that down. So just have a look for that, for some insight. So yeah, good. All right, Mira, so good to see you here. So good to see your name on the call as well. Wow, awesome, love it. All right, ladies, does anyone else have, I'll give us another minute or two if anyone else has any other questions or insights that they would like to share. Otherwise, we can definitely call it a day. All right, Carolyn, you're saying the gain journaling will massively help. Awesome. I'm so glad. I think it really will help you as well. And it's an easy one to start with, guys. Like it really is. And if you find that it's working, keep me posted and let me know how it's working, and yeah, what's kind of like how things shift for you in the month. And yeah, if anyone is interested in working a little bit more closely with me and our awesome group of fantastic women, pop me a message. We'll have a chat and we can find out, like, you know, what it's all about, what we get up to in the course, and if it's actually going to help you get to your next little evolution, your next little cycle in life. All right, guys. Otherwise, from me, from rainy Mozambique today, sending you all so much love and have a beautiful, beautiful Saturday. Take care. See you, Anya. Thank you.